Earlier this week, we started talking about the aspect of action that is really embodied in the biblical concept of faith. If you believe something, you act according to that belief. It's not, well, I think this is going to happen. It's not a think so, it's I believe and therefore I respond. But we spent most of our time really talking about what is written in Hebrews chapter 11, but that's not the only place where you deal with the action of faith. So by the time we have together on this occasion, I'd like to talk about some other verses that really kind of deal with that same kind of aspect or characteristic of faith. To begin with, in the book of Romans, chapter 4, it's a discussion of Abraham being the father of the faithful, and what Paul argues is that he's not just the father of the faith of those that are Hebrews, those who are of Israel, but the faith of everyone. And the statement is made in verse 11 that Abraham is the father of all those who believe, but then he qualifies that by talking about in verse 12, those who walk in the steps of the faith which our father Abraham had. Walking in the steps of faith. Again, it's not something that's just an idea. It's not something where, well, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God and I'm not going to change anything in my life because I don't have to. Or that since I'm saved by the grace of God, I don't need to actually alter my behavior or the way that I respond to other people in any form whatsoever. That doesn't make any sense. From a religious standpoint, you hear that all the time. You're saved by faith and you don't have to do anything. Faith requires that you do something. Here the statement is about those who walk in the steps of the faith which you find in Abraham. Now stay in Romans for just a moment and go over to chapter 11 of Romans. In Romans chapter 11, the statement is made in verse 20. The phrase that is used is stand by faith. You stand by faith, Paul writes. And again, it's something that depicts a steadfastness, not something that just kind of bends with whatever the new idea is that blows through a community or a society. You stand by faith. There's resolve. There is some kind of firmness that is grounded upon the belief that you actually possess. You stand by faith. Or the statement that Paul makes when he's writing to Christians in the city of Ephesus in Ephesians, the 6th chapter. As he describes the armor of the Christian, he makes a statement in verse 16, above all, taking the shield of faith with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. If you picture somebody in battle, and they're standing there with a shield, but they never use it to defend themselves against arrows shot in their direction. Is that the kind of soldier that you want to have guarding you? He's not even protecting himself. He's not going to protect you either. And what is pictured, again, is that kind of action that goes with it. You know how to use the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. You have on that breastplate of righteousness. You have that helmet of salvation on your head, but you have that shield of faith that you use to deflect those things that are hurled in your direction by the wicked one. Action is something that's involved even in those kind of illustrative terms, whether you're standing by faith, whether you're walking in the steps of faith, or using the shield of faith. Action is in every one of these. In fact, let's go and talk about the passage where we were earlier this week in Hebrews chapter 11. The statement that is made in chapter 11, the faith chapter of the Bible, and verse number 2, starting with verse 1. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by the elders obtained a good testimony. Some translations say the elders obtained a good report. Some translations say a commendation. The word that's translated here, testimony, is a form of the word for witness, and it means to bear witness. So here is something that actually stands as a testament, stands as a witness to the fact that you do really have faith, the way that you respond in connection with that faith. The statement that Peter makes in 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. Be sober, Be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. You're going to have hardship as a Christian. Don't lose your faith over it. In fact, with that faith, resist the adversary by being steadfast in your faith. Resist the adversary, the devil, who walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Biblical faith necessitates action. It requires it. It does not exist without it. But that concept of faith and the use of the word faith or even the word believe in our culture has been compromised in so many different ways from what biblically that concept really involves. If somebody said, well, I'm saved by faith and I rest on the grace of God and I don't have to do anything, they have totally misconstrued, misunderstood, or maybe just ignorant of what's involved in that grace of God that's extended to humanity and what's involved in our response to it. Biblical faith is something that requires action. Please be safe. We'll talk again soon.